Our first delegation is Stephen Palmetier from Waterloo. Stephen, welcome, and you have 5 minutes. The floor is yours. Hit it, turn it on.
There we go, green light, check. Thank you, Chair. My name is Steve Palmetier. I was born in Wellesley. I went to school in Waterloo, Oxford, and later the University of Waterloo. I come from a farming family there on the border of Perth East, but nevertheless, this Wilmot Land Assembly will affect them, along with a lot of other people who do not live directly adjacent to the lands that you're attempting to assemble. Tonight, I'd like to begin by referring you this week to Ontario Auditor General Shelley Spence. She delivered her first set of reports on the provincial government this week. She reports a consistent theme of lack of planning, lack of transparency, lack of proper processes, lack of public engagement, and other issues with Ontario Place, the Ontario Science Centre, and other provincial projects. Do you see the parallel I'm trying to draw here? Not a single public meeting, no studies released, no financial costing released. How much did it cost to pay that mercenary from Strathroy to chisel plow that field 4 times over? I'd like to know. It's telling that you could not find a single farmer in this region that was willing to do something like that. But these are the people you have partnered with on the Wilmot Land Assembly. It reminds me of, perhaps some councillors remember movies like The Godfather. I grew up watching things like The Sopranos instead. In those mafia stories, when the mafia don asks you for a favor, you're the one that ends up in debt, in his debt, in the end. The provincial government has asked you to do a favor and assemble some lands to hand over to his friends. You must decline this favor or you will erode trust in these council chambers and our private property rights. Or perhaps you listen to Doug's constituency rather than the people in this community that elected you. I'll return to that analogy in a moment and turn instead to recent history. Because ultimately this is nothing new. There is nothing new under the sun, and we've seen this before elsewhere. Madam Chairwoman, you're all too familiar with the lands on the east side of town. Now it's coming to the community that we have built in Wilmot. Over the last 50 years, too many of the decisions coming out of Queen's Park have stripped everyday people of their collective agency and power. These policy choices, and that's what they are, policy choices, have turned self-conscious and self-directing communities into places controlled by far-off boardrooms. With each step, we've watched the institutions that bring us together, help us see one another as equals, the institutions that safeguard our freedoms and safeguard our democracy weakened or destroyed outright. Locally owned businesses, public libraries, schools, hospitals, union halls, local news outlets. These are the kinds of institutions that are intended to be considered when invoking the powers of expropriation. But that is not what the powers of expropriation are being used for in Wilmot. It is your job to nurture and cultivate the fundamental principles that this community was built upon. This may be how business is conducted in Etobicoke, but this is not how we do business here in the region of Waterloo. So I return to this analogy I mentioned before because I think it is fitting. What is one of the operative principles of the Cosa Nostra? Cosa Nostra is Italian for this thing of ours. One of the operative principles is that it must be kept a secret and never spoken of. Why? Plausible deniability. A non-disclosure agreement with billions of dollars at stake. People's lives, their livelihood, their homes at stake. Were you bullied into signing this Faustian bargain?
Stephen, you've got 1 minute left.
What were the consequences presented to you by Don Corleone if you refused to sign? The thriving community you built for yourselves in KW would be a shame if something were to happen to it. I know a bully when I see one. I know a con man when I see one. These are the kinds of con artists that you have thrown your lot in with by signing this NDA with Ken Aker and Doug Ford. This is how they do business, and you have failed to stand up to them. No one is lined up to invest in this mega site, and no multinational CEO in their rational right mind would do so if the U.S. imposes 25% tariffs on Canadian goods, which Doug Ford today admitted is going to happen, January 20th. Tony LaMancha of the Waterloo Economic Development Corporation knows it and laughs about it. But this is no joke to the farmers behind me that have been sitting in limbo for more than 9 months. The private property owners deserve some certainty, and this community deserves some certainty. We find ourselves at a precarious time, a moment when there is little faith in either major political party to do what is best for real people and real communities. Waterloo Region will lose its planning authority in January. What will you do then? Will you listen to us, your constituents? Will you stand up to the bullies in the provincial government? Will you tell them that we are not a willing host? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I don't see any colleagues questioning, but thank you very much for your input.